Hello, hello, hello. Stephanie here, and welcome to the 22nd episode of the Rent to Rent Success podcast. We have got a very special episode for you today with service accommodation rock stars Chris and Richie joining us today. Now, I first met these guys through the formerly SA podcast, which is now going to shortly be known as the Short Stay Success by Guest Flow podcast. And they have a ton of top-notch information about service accommodation. As you all know, we don't really do service accommodation ourselves. We think it's a bit too much like hard work. But so I really am looking forward to learning from Chris and Richie today. I know you're going to get a lot of valuable information out of today's episode. So hello and welcome, service accommodation rock stars, Chris and Richie. How are you doing?
Hello. Yeah, you didn't have to block my face. Hello. No, wow. After such an introduction, we're going to have to live up to it, Chris. Rockstars to begin with. And
no pressure.
No pressure at all. Hope we can deliver, Stephanie. And thank you very much.
Just to give people your full titles, which I didn't introduce, because so do you want to just give your full names?
I'm Richie Mazivanhanga from Short Stay Success, and this is Chris Poulter.
Poulter. I would have struggled to pronounce your name, Chris Poulter, so that's why I asked.
Well, my full name is actually Tafadzwa Ritchie Mazivanhanga. There you go.
Okay, good. I need to get some practice in. So, guys, you've been doing this now for quite some time. So, take us back in time to when you first decided that service accommodation might be the way forward.
That was back, what year was it? We used to run a car, right, we're entrepreneurs, and we used to we had a choice performance cars, where we sold performance vehicles, where we would buy cars cheap and then get them serviced and get a warranty on them, and then up the value and sell it on. And someone crashed a Porsche Rockstar, and Chris, up until this day, he says that he did not crash it. The car tried to kill him. The back end went out, and and he says he was not speeding. So anyway, so that was our capital just gone in one swoop, and we just like, right, we need to do something else. So we started a company called what was it?
Choice Mobile Mechanics.
Choice Mobile Mechanics, where we did not require a lot of capital, and none of us were mechanics or from the mechanical trade at all, had any experience apart from my dad, who was a mechanic, but then engineer. But then we just didn't have that experience at all, and we took it from there. Choice Mobile Mechanics, and I'll let you take on from there, Chris.
Because we just the MVP for that business was basically a website. And me sat with my mobile phone waiting for it to ring. And if someone wanted a booking, we'd like flow around going, quick, can we find someone to do it? So, it goes to show that actually sometimes you can start with something basic and turn it into quite a big business. And actually by the time we shut it down, we were turning over best part of £1 million per year, all of it generated from internet marketing. Horrendously unprofitable, but it gave us a massive education in business and marketing in particular, but also operations, logistics, bookkeeping, the boring stuff, which people forget about, but actually take up the vast chunks of your time, really. And it was while we were running that business that we kind of got more interested in property now.
Wow. It's a lot more simpler than that. Someone went away on holiday to Greece with his other half, and then he came back and he goes, Richie, I've read this book. And I'm thinking to myself, what were you doing on holiday reading a book? And he says, you need to read it, and we need to get into property. And I was just like, okay, right, a bit overwhelmed. And it was Property Magic by Simon Zucci, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that's what kicked us off on our property journey.
It was, I mean, we had something at that point. We'd had something called the 5-5 plan, where we were planning to sell the company for £5 million in 5 years. Never quite happened, but we kind of, even in just the process of going through that and making plans for what we wanted to do with the business, we went, well, everyone knows when you sell a business and get money that you actually put that into property. You go and buy a portfolio and you live off that money. So we'd always kind of had it in the back of our head, but as Ritchie says, I went away and I was staying in a hotel in Athens, and it had this kind of rooftop pool, or it might have been a jacuzzi, and I was sat there reading the book, and my kind of girlfriend went downstairs to get showered and everything, and came back to find me about 2 hours later. She's like, "What on earth is going on?" I'm like, "What? Apparently it'd been 2 hours."
It is a magical book.
It is, and I think for entrepreneurs, it's about understanding the potential with property, and I'm sure we've all had that kind of aha moment where we suddenly realise, hang on, I don't need to be like a multi-millionaire to actually get started in property. And yeah, that was what kicked it off for us, I think.
Yeah.
What I love is the interjections. No, this is what happens. And,
the real story for me.
Yeah, it happens a lot. It's almost like we've got like 85 episodes together, isn't it? So.
Yes, yeah.
It's very cool on on your podcast. I love the bounce. But just before we move on, just touch on a couple of things there. I thought that you were going to say, well, we started up a mechanics business. We had no mechanical skills, so to speak, and it all went tits up. But basically, you said you grew it to £1 million, and actually did, well, do you know what?
£1 million turnover.
Yeah.
Profit in the minus, which is the important thing. It sounds impressive.
However, there are skills that you need to grow a lot of revenue, and from having a lot of revenue, you can then improve the profitability of a business. But over 75% of businesses never go beyond the VAT threshold. Did you know that? 75% of UK businesses do not go beyond the VAT threshold, and also do not employ anyone. So I think to grow a business to £1 million in turnover is significant. So
I was not aware of that stat. Like, seriously, it was not. No.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And the percentages get really small when you go above 300k in revenue, not even profit.
Wow.
Nice.
So, thank you for the feedback. Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, so you guys are the dons. And I love up in the comments, Linda is saying hi to you both.
Hi, hello, Linda. Linda's amazing, by the way. Stop.
Yeah. And she's even giving Stephanie a hello as well as Chris and Richie. And Victoria is also joining us. So guys, if you have questions as we talk through this, we would love to hear from you, or just show them some love with a thumbs up. So we just at the point you've sold, or you've got out of your £1 million business, which wasn't very profitable, but a great achievement nonetheless. And you've come back, almost split up with your girlfriend over property magic, Chris.
Yeah, not quite, but yeah.
and you said to yourselves, we've got to go into property. So what happened next?
What happens next? Yeah, I got the book. I did not read it for about 3 months. We started going on property courses. We attended a few property courses. We started off with PIN, actually, wasn't it? Because that was the book, Simon Zucchi's book. And I got more into property from engaging and interacting with people before I actually read the book. So I read the book in month 4.
Yeah.
That's it. All this was going on while we were running the other business, and I think we were getting more and more distracted, knowing that property was definitely the future. And could we hurry up and do this thing with this other business? And I think what happened in essence is we took our eye off the ball a little bit with that, because we were so excited with the property, and we just got to a point where we went, hang on, this doesn't make sense anymore. Why are we doing this when we're still not making any money a few years on? When actually you look at how much effort it's going to take over the next 12 months, we figured if we put that time and effort into property instead, that actually we'd end up ahead of the curve on it.
Yeah.
So, but it was obviously a daunting decision to make when you shut down a business, especially if it's one which is actually paying your wages and you're living off the money.
It was not an easy decision, and the decision was not that difficult, but then telling that to my other half when I got back home, we're shutting that business.
By the way, we don't have a business anymore, but don't worry, there's a new one coming along. And so that's definitely a worry, and that kind of dictated the approach we had to take, because we went, right, well, we need enough money to live off, the both of us, very quickly, and that meant that we had to do something which we could go in at scale. it's not something I'd necessarily recommend to people. In fact, quite the opposite. Build, test, scale is our model that we talk to people about. We jumped in the
deep end, didn't we?
We had no choice.
However, we did have a strategic plan around it, whilst we left the other business, these were skills we amassed from the previous business as well, making strategic plans. And we had a few coaches as well, and mentors in that business. So, we learned a lot of valuable skills. That's why we don't believe in failures. Mistakes, it's just all lessons.
Yeah, a lot of lessons. So tell us what happened next. So you decided, property, yes, cash flow. How did you actually get started?
Well, we've been doing networking for a little while, haven't we?
Yeah.
And we met a couple of guys at the networking circuit who actually we got on with really well. Yeah, we started like a kind of mini mastermind group was there where we were helping each other out with our businesses, and a couple of other people involved in that. And at some point we realized, well, hang on, we're trying to achieve nearly the same thing here. Maybe we should team up. And these guys were doing rent to rent. You probably know them, Wade and Nigel.
Yes.
From My Property Heroes. And they'd been doing rent to rent, and they definitely were rent to rent rock stars.
They were amazing. Rent to rent, they were doing a great job, weren't they?
They did the typical thing where it took them kind of 6 to 9 months to get their first property, and they're just getting to the point where they're going, no, maybe this isn't working for us. And then, fast forward 12 months later, and it was something crazy like 12, 15 properties they had, 80 rooms. It was, it was an amazing achievement what they'd achieved in a short space of time. But what they'd found was that building relationships really works for rent to rent, as I'm sure you well know. And the first landlord came back to them with number 3 and number 4 and number 6. Before too long, they were having a conversation about, well, actually, I've got this kind of big guest house, which, there were some circumstances behind, but basically never really intended to end up running it. But we've been running it for the last few years, and I kind of like my life back. So these guys started having a conversation with the owners about that, and to turn a very long story short, we ended up setting up a new business to actually run that property.
That's I had heard about this, and I did think it was marvelous, because how many units was it? Remind us.
So if I remember correctly, it was 22 rooms.
Yeah.
About 15 of which were ensuite, and then there were 7 with kind of shared facilities. And then it had 7 studio flats out the back, which previously had been let predominantly to kind of LHA type tenants. And what we did when we took it over, we kind of spoke to people. A lot of people kind of moving on anyway. So we, as people were leaving, we turned that over to part of the kind of main hotel, because obviously having self-contained facilities in a room is, again, one step up from having an ensuite, and worked really well for people, and also obviously allowed us to charge premium rates. So.
Yeah, so you've got 30 odd units, and I'm guessing, well, what happened? How did it go?
It was a hell of an experience, wasn't it? Because, jumping in deep end is definitely the word for it. Operationally, your first project in short stay, and you're running, essentially a 29-bed hotel. We learned a huge amount from it. It was kind of a great deal of fun. The money was, I guess, very hard to manage, because it's quite volatile. You've got big months where you've got lots of money coming in, and then it gets quiet a little bit.
And then you might have, because you got to bear in mind, with older buildings, you've got overheads, and we had signed a full repair and insure FRI lease, so we were responsible for stuff that needs to be repaired over there. And you've got some issues that occurred over a period of time, and if something goes wrong, you need to sort it out. We had some, I won't go into detail, but some very horrible stories, and some good stories around it as well. But very expensive stories.
We've tended to find, and I don't know if this applies in rent to rent, but the amount of maintenance required is probably exponential to the number of bedrooms. So if you have an 8-bedroom property, it probably takes 4 times as much maintenance as a 4-bedroom property. That's kind of been our experience with it. So you can imagine what it's like with a 29-bedroom property. It's just, constant, basically.
But over that time of running that, we then started building apartments, getting apartments handed to us or from other landlords, and us managing them. And
it was kind of by accident, really.
It was by accident, yeah.
It wasn't like a concerted strategy. We went, right, let's go out and do this. Obviously, we kind of hit the market with this deal, and people who we were connected with and our property networks knew about it, and so people just started going, oh, hang on, well, I've got a property, I've been thinking about doing it. What's it look like on my numbers? Oh, yeah, that looks like it should work well. Oh, well, could you manage it for us? And we're a bit like, manage? Okay, yeah, so why not? If you want to give us the money, then don't see why not.
And off the back of that, we learned that with the apartments, the overheads or the outgoings were quite, you could predict, they were predictable, let's say, yeah? And you would know exactly how much you'd be spending each month. Whereas with the guest house, it'll be steady, then it goes skyrockets and then drops again. So yeah, we learned various things from that as well.
And particularly the management model worked really well for us with apartments as well. With all this volatility which was going on, busy weekend, quiet weekend with the hotel, then essentially every month the income kept trickling in. And yes, it wasn't as big amounts as the hotel, but it got to the point where we looked at it and went, actually, it's probably more sustainable to build a business around that. And that was just the point where with our other business partners, they had a slightly different vision, and it's all extremely amicable. Love the guys, get on with them, great. But we decided, hang on, our vision's over here with the management of the apartments, and their vision was continuing what they were doing, and also taking some focus back on kind of rent to rent as well, because they'd always found that a great strategy and it worked well for them.
Profitable, yeah.
So you've got some fans, guys. Linda is now saying, Chris and Richie are awesome service accommodation mentors.
Thank you, Linda.
Fivers in the post. And Chris, we don't know who this is, but they're saying Chris and Richie's great guys, and somebody who knows you personally.
Don't know who it is, but they know us incredibly well.
Thank you very much. That was me on my iPhone.
So you sounds like you decided to go down the apartments route and do service accommodation on apartments, and you were using a management percentage model rather than a typical guaranteed rent model. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And every business that we've been through, we've kind of learned from it and learned next time I do. And that's I think a phrase you hear a lot from
what would you do differently if you were to do this again?
Yeah, that's it. And we really do try and take that, from everything that we do. And what we learned from choice mobile mechanics and the kind of car business was that it's very hard to run a business when you have high overheads, because each month the clock goes back to zero and you've got a big sprint ahead of you to get the money that you need to survive, let alone to push on and grow your business. So we learned that lesson from the car business. And
sorry, that's from the mechanics business. From the performance cars business, we learned not to let Chris drive your asset. No. We learned not to put all your eggs in one basket, because if it goes, it's gone.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think what we learned is that it was going to be easier to build a business around something which had less volatile income with management than it did when we were exposed to all the risk. Because if you imagine when you're running properties yourself and short stay, then you might have 8 months of the year where you make really good money. Yeah, and you might have 4 months of the year where you break even or make a small loss. But overall, it works out really well. Now you imagine trying to scale a business where you have employees, you potentially have an office, you have these monthly costs which just keep coming out anyway, then suddenly management looks very attractive, because it might drop from £400 to £200 over December, January, the quiet months, but it's not going to do what operating does, where you go from a very healthy profit margin to essentially zero.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. And you actually scaled it up. You had a lot of units. Is that still where you are now, with a lot of units and your service apartment management business?
Well, I think it's sprawled out from there a little bit, really. Around that time we were doing the management company. We also started the service accommodation podcast. Obviously now it's Short Stay Success. And we started doing some consultancy work out the back of that, based on our experience and what we were doing.
So that's what Linda mentioned as well.
Southampton Apartments, yeah. So we started working with Linda probably 4+ years ago now. I think.
We worked really closely with Linda for a long period of time, and she's an operator in Heathrow. She's based in West London, and she knows her business and she knows her stuff.
And that was so alongside scaling up the management business in Southampton. And just to be clear, we made a conscious choice not to actually take any kind of guaranteed rent or rent-to-rent properties, as you probably call them, within Southampton, because we felt it would be a conflict with our clients. Now, that's not always the case, and I'm not saying don't mix to anyone, but for us, we just felt it would be much cleaner split if we could just do management in Southampton and maybe invest in kind of rent-to-rent guaranteed rent properties elsewhere. And that's what we did, so we do have, guaranteed rent properties in short stay. They're just not in Southampton. So we have a couple of other cities that we operate in, and actually it's trusted clients of ours from the consultancy who are managing out those properties, and actually a lot of them joint ventures with them as well. So from
people, you touched on relationships earlier. It's people we've got long-term relationships with. It's not like we just start working with people just because we see pound signs or there's potential. It's people we know, like, and trust, and we've built and established relationships with over time.
And that's a lesson we learned very early on, wasn't it? In the property world, it was like, everyone's really friendly and great and everything like that, but you end up jumping into something with someone without even really thinking about it, and you get burnt a few times, and you go,
we've learned from our lessons, from our own experiences, and we were burnt a few times, and we've learned.
So tell me about that. How does it work? So say you've got people who are doing your various service accommodation programs who are doing really well. How does a partnership work, like the type that you were talking about just now? Do properties come to you and to people in the areas?
Well, maybe if we do a quick case study. So if we think about if we think about one area that we kind of invested in, so one of our consultancy clients came to us with essentially 2 blocks. One was I think 10 properties, and one was 8 properties, kind of mix of 1 and 2 beds, basically. And so we're looking at the ways to do it, and they were currently doing guaranteed rent, and they were thinking of taking the properties on themselves, but it would have pushed them over the VAT threshold. Now, what we worked out was that with careful structuring, that actually they could do it with investors and still make the same amount of money, even with a 50% stake. Because with short stay, VAT is one of the key considerations when you're looking at deals, how to structure it and how to scale in particular. And what we realized was that with these blocks, if we broke the deal down into a number of smaller investments and we work with separate investors, then it would be completely compliant from an HMRC point of view, because you're choosing to spread the risk with different investors and split the properties up that way. But also it would mean, because they're completely separate businesses with different shareholders, they could then each not be VAT registered. Each of them could be structured to essentially stay below the VAT threshold and not have to worry about the effect that you'd otherwise get from scaling. And so because of those kind of VAT savings, it actually worked out better for the operator to actually work with others than it would be to do themselves, because there's no way they could have stayed below the VAT threshold if they'd done that deal without any outside investment. And of course, it also cut down their capital by 50%. So you've increased your ROI by 100% on the deal.
So they'll benefit from the profits on a monthly basis, but they also charge a management fee. So their management company still also benefits from the income from there.
I love that deal. I wouldn't be able to repeat it, but this is why people love to work with you. And Linda's saying, when you were crediting Linda with all her knowledge, she's saying she got all her service accommodation knowledge because of you guys. So
wow, thank you, Linda. But no, Linda's just glorifying us. No, Linda has got a lot of skills. She's amassed over a lifetime. And Linda is great. Like, seriously,
But seriously, it is the people who are talented who get mentoring and the coaching and seek out skills to further develop their knowledge in the way that
True.
Linda has done, and in the way that I'm sure that you do as well, and that I know that certainly we do.
No, it's always good being an action taker.
Yes.
That's the thing, it's action taking. And yeah, not everyone takes action. Other people just listen to advice and note it down and don't take action. The people who make a difference in this world are people who take action, you know, and you learn from your mistakes, and yeah, you improve minimum viable product, MVP, start like that, and yeah, constantly go and improve.
It's probably not fashionable to say, but I'd also say there is a spectrum, you know, and I think you hear a lot of people who are just like, go out there and do it, you know, that's action, action, action. And there's the other thing that like, make sure you're doing the right thing. Yeah, and I think you hear a lot of both. Yeah, and I don't think either end is particularly healthy, is it?
No,
you know, if you just go out and do stuff, then you might be doing the wrong thing and take yourself in the wrong direction, but if you just sat there thinking about it all day, nothing happens, right?
What it is, it's about the middle ground, about strategically planning stuff and then taking action when you've made a plan.
Yeah, and thinking
and that's really what we talk about with build, test, scale. It's a very simple model for doing it. So do what works and then scale it up. Sorry.
Oh, great! Your sound is going in last a little bit, but hopefully it'll last us out. So Tanya is now saying, "Hi, Chris and Richie. Are you still offering mentoring?" Oh, hopefully we still got
that question, Chris.
We've taken a step back from publicizing what we're doing at the moment because, I'm sure you can appreciate when COVID hit, we realized it was going to have a very big impact on all of our clients. So essentially what we did was battered down the hatches. We spoke to people and said, right, we're going to be spending twice as much time with you as we normally do. We're going to halve the prices. We want you to kind of survive. You know, and that was it. It was our sole focus for kind of 4 to 6 weeks. Was probably how do we make sure that all of these businesses survive? Yeah. And they did. Obviously, we've all been through a lot of hardships over COVID, but we've managed to get through everything. Not only is every single business still operating, but every business is still a client of ours in the consultancy as well. And I think when you think of everything that the businesses have been through, I think that's massive show of solidarity, because it's not just about us, but it's actually the community we built with people that we're working with who are genuinely friends now, as well as, consultancy clients. So it's not something that we advertise very much, but if you ping us a Facebook message, we can, have a chat about it for sure. So.
Well, you are amazing in what you offer on that side of things. But I just wanted to point people towards your podcast, because I know that your last few episodes you've had some of your students on talking about their experiences of getting through COVID. So if people are interested in finding out more about the reality of the last few months from newer companies who have more recently started in service accommodation than you have, they should check out your Short Stay Success podcast.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. That's the new name. So we're currently in the process of rebranding, literally this week, aren't we? Yeah. From the SA podcast, the Service Accommodation podcast, to Short Stay Success by Guest Flow. So we're looking forward to it. But thank you for highlighting those stories, because Chris and I actually sat down and we were going to release a few more episodes and give out more knowledge. And Chris highlighted, people want to hear from other people. They want to hear real life stories, as opposed to us just telling people what's going on. So we decided to speak to a few of our clients and invite them on the podcast. And it's stories of people who've gone through the tough times and how they've adapted and how they managed and how they fared to survive through the COVID period. And some of them have just not survived, but they've actually thrived, and made it really work and profitable.
Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, we were doing something very similar. But talk to us also, because I know that you do your service accommodation, but also you've been buying various properties as well. So tell us a little bit about that side of things.
That's when we say buying, that's in SPVs and stuff, where it's in different cities and we work with partners, and but that's on a small scale at the moment. That's something we're working towards with our current business that we're working on, and the plan for that is to then amass assets.
Because what we found over time is that with short stay, and particularly with the consultancy work that we do, then opportunities do come up for investment. And obviously we're able to take some, and there's others which we're not. And so just over time, I guess at first in a very informal way, we just started to have a bit of a kind of investor network around us, right? And start to work with people in that respect. And again, it works really well. We talked about how how that deal we were kind of doing a mini case study on before worked really well for the operator. They were making the same amount of money with half the capital. Actually, in that case, it was a quarter of the capital, because we also restructured the deal to rent the furniture to fit out. Because when you're talking about a guaranteed rent deal, or rent to rent in your case, and you're working with investors, then really it's all about reducing your initial capital, because that's where the risk exposure is. And if you can make, even double digit, 10-15% difference to the amount of capital you need to put into the deal in the first place, the ROI increases substantially.
Yeah.
With the purchasing model, sorry, Stephanie. Yeah, with the purchasing model, we're going to be pursuing that further towards the end of the year, because I will mention what we're focusing on later on this call. Yeah, but I will mention what we're focusing on at the moment, because what we've learned is focus as well. Because you can't have your energy and your attention spread across too many things, because you'll drop all the balls. And with COVID, we just had to pivot and adapt and focus on something else in the interim. But yeah, the purchasing model, we'll be focusing on that again towards the end of the year.
Now we're getting complaints. No, a person on LinkedIn is commenting on refurb from another laptop or phone, but it might just be background noise at your side.
Oh yes, yeah. We are in a club working space at the moment, and there are some acoustics. Yeah, it's not co-working, not club working.
That's okay. So we've talked about so tell us about, you've got your other business that you're working on now. Tell us what that's all about. The guest Oh, wait, you're not talking about that now that I mentioned it.
We'll talk about it now, because you've mentioned it. We're not just going to keep quiet. Go on, Chris. Will you take this one on?
Yeah, so I think guest flow is a really kind of interesting story, because when we think about kind of how it's come about, it really is just on knowledge of kind of short stay and how it needs to work, and our frustration really with existing software out there. So what happens once you kind of hit 15, 20 properties that you're kind of either managing or operating yourselves, you get to the point where you can't just do it all yourself. Yeah. And once it stops being all in your head, you kind of need a system around it, some way to manage it so that whoever's coming in, they can kind of step in and do things. Now, there's lots of software out there for short stay management. Don't get us wrong. Loads and loads and loads. A lot of people use software like Toki, which is very good for what it is, but it suffers the same problem that all software does, and it's basically all about talking to channels, Airbnb, Booking.com, what rates of it, how much should it be, what's the availability, what bookings have come in. So it's all about the mechanical stuff, and that is nothing about what you need to do as a business. For a business, it's important, like, what payments do I need to take? Is there any guests I should be worried about arriving this weekend where we need to do further due diligence on them? Have the check-in instructions been sent out to people? Those are the actual important mechanics of the business. And there aren't really any kind of tools out there which allow you to do that in a seamless way. And after years and years of kind of struggling with it and building our own very sophisticated kind of custom solutions just to enable us to do what we did, we said, well, actually, this is quite a big problem for us. It's a big problem for all our clients, and it's a big problem for all the listeners that we talk to. So actually, why don't we put our kind of time and focus into this? And that's really where we've been coming to. Richie alluded to the fact that COVID hit, and we had a number of different businesses. What it did force us to do is to kind of take a look at the big picture and go, what's your best chance for success, over the next kind of 3 to 5 years or so. And what we realized is that we're trying to do lots and lots of things at once, and doing okay at all of them, but none of them was ever going to hit that kind of peak performance business level which we wanted to get to. And so for us, looking at everything that we're doing, we just realized that the scale of the problem was so big within that space that the potential for the business would be big. And ultimately, when you break down what is entrepreneurship, what are we trying to do, it's about finding a problem, that we can monetize the solution to, and it's really that simple.
Giving people as much value. That's it. Yeah, solving a problem by giving people value.
Yeah, because people need a solution, and we've struggled for years with that. All of our clients have, and actually building a team collaboration tool where it's absolutely seamless. Whoever's coming in to work on it, they can see exactly what's going on. We can manage their tasks for them. We can understand exactly what's going on as business owners with real-time reporting on staff activity as much as our financial performance. And for us, it's a very kind of exciting problem which we're now focusing on. So.
That's fantastic. Very exciting, very scalable, and massive impact for people to be able to run their business more fully. Now, I know that one of your superpowers is the systems and the detail. And tell us a little bit about what you think the main things any new service accommodation business should be thinking about from the systems side of things.
Well, I think for me, systems is about understanding where you want to go. So if you want to have a rent-to-rent business, which is going to have, 3 or 4 properties and give you a very good lifestyle, then what you need from systems is very different from if you want to have, 500 units across 10 different major cities in the UK. Yeah, so a bit like strategy, I think with systems is like start with the end in mind. Because sometimes you can actually go too overboard with systems and you end up spending all of your time on that and not on the more profitable areas of the business. So it's always going to be a balance, right?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about perhaps more typical person who just wants to have a few rent-to-rent properties doing service accommodation in one location. Where should they start off? Maybe your website, but where should they start, really?
Yeah, I mean, so I would start off by going, what is it that they need to do? Is it just going to be them working within the business? Yeah, and if it is, then you're going to need different levels of systems. So what you really need is something as a reference, something that you can remember what's happening and when, make sure that you don't forget things. If there's going to be more people, even if it's just you and a business partner, then you need to think about how you're communicating information and keeping track of things, and start looking at what systems are out there, because quite often people have similar problems in their businesses, and that's why software like the ones that we're developing for Short Stay comes out of it, because it's like, okay, we can solve a whole bunch of people's problems at once. So one way we found of thinking about what systems should we use is actually researching what systems exist, because they probably haven't just come about for the sake of it. They've come out at some point to solve people's needs. Yeah. And when we've looked at it before, then there's actually some great systems in and around rent-to-rent. You probably use some of them yourselves, but certainly I've been impressed with Arthur when I've seen it. Using that with an integration with Zero, and then maybe go cardless to have direct debits, from all of your customers is a great way to do it. And then thinking about, actually, does it matter if I have, a couple of hours work to do the paperwork each time, or do I want to spend money on a nice snazzy, onboarding system so that I make sure I do the same process each time, and maybe it's electronic with signatures. And that stuff can very much make your life easier, but it's also a lot of investment work to get it up and running. And sometimes we've looked at these systems and gone, look, it's going to take us 15 hours to do, and we do half an hour a month on it. Probably not worth it at this point. So that's maybe the evaluation to make when you're looking at one of these systems. How much time is it actually going to save me? Yeah.
Were you going to say something, Richie?
Oh, no, just listening. No. He's listening to the guy.
Which is a geek, but
yeah. We all need the geeks. My sister's the geek. But what I really like Arthur. So having run another business, in inverted commas, where there weren't really any systems, it was just me. I was really keen to get that in place right from the beginning. And then we had a system for onboarding, which we outsourced to a VA. After I'd onboarded those first 9 tenants for a 5-bed and a 4-bed property, I said, right, I'm retiring. From all that, because it was such a great investment, because you're only paying for those hours, and also that is their singular focus to make sure that everybody has had all those actions. And the great thing about it was we could go in at any point over the weekend or in the evening and see exactly where everybody was. And all of their paperwork and so on is in two places, in our Google Drive, and it's in the system, the software, the Arthur in our case. But yeah, very interesting about that. And were there other things that you wanted to move on to today that I may not have asked you about?
No, nothing for me. Just advice to people, really.
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of parallels between a short stay business and a rent-to-rent business. I mean, some people listening and watching might be interested in short stay, but I'm sure there's plenty who are quite happy with the industry that we're in. So what advice do you reckon we could give people, what we've learned through short stay and our other businesses, which would also impact their rent-to-rent business? He loves it when I put him on the spot like
this. He does this all the time on the podcast, at least on the podcast, but it's not live. I'm like, no, hold on. You can't just do that to this day. First one is planning, as in I've mentioned it before, and please don't belittle those words. Planning is very essential to your business, because if you don't plan strategically, if you don't set yourself any goals, how do you know you've arrived? How do you know you've reached your goal? How do you know you've won? And it's always good to celebrate successes. And if you don't have any goals or targets, then how do you know you've been successful? So planning and starting with the end in mind, like Chris mentioned earlier, starting with the end in mind and then work backwards. And that's how you plan. Start with the end in mind, where you want to be your passion, your purpose, your vision, your values, all of that involved. But then, plan with the end in mind, start from the end in mind, or start with the end in mind and then work backwards.
Brilliant. And we've had a great question, actually. It's about when people mix up the SA and the HMO. Victoria's asking, are we allowed to do SA and HMO accommodation? Have you had experience of?
Short answer?
Yeah.
2 letters, NO, unfortunately. Accommodation can be done under C3, which is just normal residential let, whereas it can't be done under C4, which is an HMO.
Yeah, multiple people
households
sharing a single household. So I guess you could expand that to say if you are letting the house as a full house to one group of people, then you could do that on an HMO. It would be considered a kind of temporary switch back to C3. Now, where you obviously need to be very, very careful with that is when you live in an Article 4 area, because you might have grandfathered in your Article 4 rights to run your HMO, or you might have had to go through planning for it. But either way, it's quite precious. And you could end up in a situation where the council goes, well, actually, you've been having it on, Booking.com and Airbnb for the last couple of years. So we've taken that as a move to C3. You want to have it C4 again? Come and apply for planning permission.
You won't get it.
Well, we know the difficulties of getting C4 in an Article 4 area, I'm sure.
Yeah, we reside in Southampton, and Southampton is an Article 4 area. So, it's difficult to get C4 planning.
Yeah. So when you're talking about allowed, I think that probably pretty much cover it. As a whole unit, potentially, yes, but check out the Article 4. Now, if you're talking about individual rooms to individual people, it's never going to be in line with C4 planning permission. So.
Great, thank you very much. So one of the things I do talk to people about often on these interviews, we're going to be talking about the ups and the downs of managing your own business. But how do you feel that it's impacted on you? I'll start off with you then, Richie, and your family, that decision to ditch the Porsches and mechanics and get involved in property all those years ago.
I think it's just, it was not easy. We learned because as much as you can plan, you don't know what's coming. You can plan for the worst case scenario and prepare for it, but it doesn't mean that you're welcoming that worst case scenario, because as and when it does hit, it'll be painful. But it's made us stronger, and it's, fingers crossed, my other half's got a lot more trust and faith in me in what we do, because I hope it's encouraged her as well, because she's got her own businesses now that she runs, and it's made us stronger as a family unit, I would say. It's scary, as in when we were single people, we could make decisions without worrying about the ramifications or the impact on other people. But I say for myself because I got a family. You're not single, you've got another half. But yeah, I've got children. So any decision I make doesn't just impact me, it impacts everyone else. So it's never easy, but then that then reassures or reaffirms the planning and making sure that it happens. And you've got no chance you've got no second chances. You've just got one take at it. And yeah, just got to grab it and make it happen.
Great. And what about you, Chris?
I think for me, getting into property has felt just like an evolution, really, rather than a revolution. We've actually known each other 20 years now, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
And we've been doing business together for 10 years. So from where it very first started, obviously, with performance cars, mechanics, hotels, management businesses, investments, consultancy, software, it's all felt like a kind of fairly a fairly kind of natural progression, I think, all the way through. And, we've seen changes as we've pivoted, but we've also seen a continuation. And, ultimately, again, even looking back to the first businesses we did, the kind of core marketing and operational skills that we learned from that business are absolutely critical to everything that we're doing now. So even if you do end up pivoting, to a different area of property or even outside of property completely, it's not a problem, because the real value is the IP that you're learning along the way, and that IP essentially is how to make money.
That's it. It's all the skills that you amass over time, and all the lessons that we learn, from the good, the bad, the ugly, the lessons, they're no mistakes, the ups and downs. And it's the valuable people we've met along the way who have helped us on our journey, and people we've helped on their journeys, and just built valuable relationships with over time.
Yeah, well, I just want to credit you guys, because you're not always out there saying what you do or putting your head above the parapet, but I certainly have been following your journey for years. You put out a massive amount of really incredibly valuable free information through your podcast, through your blogs, and through other means, as Linda was there saying, to get that sort of credits. So thank you for coming and sharing just a taste of that with our listeners today. And so thank you very much for coming on, Chris Poulter and Richie. I'm going to try it, Mazivanhanga.
Thank you. There you go. Mazivanhanga. There you go.
Oh, it's easy.
Like work.
And thank you for watching and listening. But for now, it's bye from Chris and Richie.
Thank you very much for having us, Stephanie. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
And bye from me. See you soon.